honorable members of the committee, on behalf of FDD and its Center on Sanctions and Illicit Finance, thank you for the opportunity to testify, and particularly with such a distinguished panel of experts. Ken, thank you for your service and your brother's service to our country. I want to emphasize that today the Iranian regime is involved in a range of dangerous and illicit activities. In fact, recently the regime tested a ballistic missile capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. It's massively increased its crackdown on its own citizens. It's expanded its support for Syria's murderous Assad regime and for terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. Meanwhile, Iran remains the leading state sponsor of terrorism and is currently holding several American hostages. The Iran nuclear agreement, the JCPOA, gives the regime a patient pathway to a nuclear weapons capability as key nuclear restrictions begin sunsetting after 8 years. In addition, the agreement provides extensive sanctions relief likely to benefit the most dangerous elements of the regime, including those directly involved in terrorism, specifically the Revolutionary Guards, which control key strategic sectors of Iran's economy, and the Supreme Leader's $95 billion holding company called the Execution of Imam Khomeini's Order, or ICO. It's difficult to imagine a significant business transaction with foreign companies where the IRGC or ICO won't be in on the deal. These financial gains will enable them to expand their dangerous activities. In anticipation of the sanctions relief from the Iran deal, President Rouhani's 2015-2016 budget rewards the IRGC, the intelligence services, and the hardline clerical establishment with a 48% increase in expenditures. The IRGC itself will receive 64% of public military spending, which is set to rise to $11 to $12 billion annually. The IRGC's massive construction arm, Khatam al-Anbiya, will see its budget double. If passed as prologue, the cash will be spent partly on the IRGC's regional aggression, ballistic missile program, and support for terrorism. Despite Iranian threats, including most recently from the Supreme Leader, the JCPOA does not preclude the use of non-nuclear sanctions. The administration has done little, however, to respond to Iran's threatening behavior. But regardless of whether one believes that the JCPOA was a great deal or a terrible deal, Congress needs to take the lead on ramping up sanctions to address Iran's support for terrorism and using other provisions to target illicit behavior not covered by the JCPOA. An important first step is to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization and to sanction ICO, where the nexus between corruption and sponsorship of terrorism is overwhelmingly clear. There are major loopholes in U.S. law, given the overwhelming evidence that the IRGC, and not just its Quds force, is involved in supporting terrorism, as well as the dangers from the imminent lifting of U.S. sanctions on the Supreme Leader's $95 billion terrorism slush fund. Taking these steps against the IRGC and ICO are not a violation of the agreement. My written testimony provides greater detail on additional steps that Congress could take, but I want to emphasize the elimination of tax breaks for companies doing business in Iran, provisions addressing Iran's support for terrorism, not proliferation, and therefore not precluded by the agreement. The goal is to diminish the funds available to the IRGC, ICO, and their support for terrorism and other illicit activities. Now, some may argue that preventing tax benefits to U.S. and foreign companies which do business with state sponsors of terrorism will have little impact. I disagree. It is exactly the use of these non-nuclear measures that will undercut the incentive for these companies to engage with illicit Iranian actors. First, if the U.S. doesn't increase pressure through these non-nuclear sanctions, including through the use of tax provisions, to target Iran's dangerous activities, we're going to be effectively rewriting the agreement as demanded by Iran's Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei. We should not be unilaterally disarming our coercive power by giving in to the Supreme Leader's threats. Second, Congress should use its powers to limit the extent to which foreign subsidiaries of U.S. companies engage with the leading state sponsor of terrorism. If current tax provisions are insufficient to deter this business, Congress should consider strengthening them. If Congress limited OFAC's licensing authorities for U.S. parent foreign subsidiary transactions and imposed a 100% tax rate, for example, on profits from Iran, these companies would be significantly deterred from this business. And Congress should explore imposing negative tax consequences on companies doing business in the U.S. with foreign affiliates doing business with Iran, regardless of the location of a company's headquarters. Third and finally, Congress should examine the criteria under which the President could use his waiver authority in this tax provision. These tax benefits should be blocked for a state sponsor of terrorism like Iran. Unlike Libya, a country that did benefit from presidential waivers, Iran will not dismantle its nuclear program, not end its state sponsorship of terrorism, and not make restitution of the past victims of Iranian terrorism. Unfortunately, there's a substantial risk that tens of billions of dollars will flow to Iran will be used in part to kill and maim future victims. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. Schitzer.